Man Up, a program dedicated to inspiring and helping men live lives of heroic virtue. And now, it's time to Man Up.
Welcome to Man Up on Iowa Catholic Radio. We are broadcasting on the Iowa Catholic Radio Network. I am Joe Stopulos, and excited today to have on my good friend, Father P.J. McManus. We're going to discuss the Triduum. Obviously, happy Holy Week to you all. No better guest to have on. We're just coming off his talk at Man Up on Friday to discuss the topic, which was the Triduum, which is happening at the end of this week. Let us start in prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and the snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray, and do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl about the world seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. In the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. When I saw, I've obviously talked about the event that happened on Friday many times now. When I saw that P.J. McManus, Father P.J., was going to be speaking on the Triduum at Man Up the week before, I was very excited about it, because if you've listened to my show for any amount of time, I talk a lot about getting into the church calendar, and specifically around Holy Week, right? Really ramping it up and ending strong, finishing the race strong, this race of Lent or Exodus 90 or whatever you've been doing to prepare for Easter. Let's not just tiptoe to the finish line here. Let's finish strong. And Father PJ is going to join me today to kind of harken back to what he spoke about at Man Up, which is around how what is the Triduum? How should we be celebrating? How can we get the most out of it? What are some of those things we can do in our personal life, in our family life? What can we do to enter deeply into this most sacred time of the church calendar? And I firmly believe that the more we put into it, the more we try to emulate Christ in his suffering, death, resurrection, the more we try to enter into this period of time with him, the more we're going to get out of it at Easter. The more we will then look like him at Easter, the more we'll be able to celebrate the joy of the Easter season by entering into the Passion on Thursday night and Friday. So with that, I'm really excited on the other side of this break to have on Father P.J. McManus. Stick around. We're going to head to a short break, and we'll be right back.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by Golden Rule Heating and Cooling. Since 1999, Golden Rule Heating and Cooling has been supporting customers with their rules to live by: respect, understanding, loyalty, expertise, and service. GoldenRulePHC.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by CTO. Your support has helped thousands of students attend our Catholic schools. CTOIowa.org. At CTO, the bottom line, it's for the kids and their future.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by Bozen the Florist. Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, weddings, whatever the message, say more with Bozen. Bozen.com, 515-244-ROSE. Bozen makes the moment mean more. Support for Iowa Catholic Radio provided by Five Sons Naturescapes. Five Sons Naturescapes is a Catholic veteran-owned family company providing premium outdoor landscaping. Learn more about Five Sons Naturescapes at FiveSonsNaturescapes.com. FiveSonsNaturescapes.com.
My help comes from you. You're right here.
Welcome back to Man Up on Iowa Catholic Radio. Excited today to have my guest, Father P.J. McManus, here to discuss the topic of his talk he gave last week at Man Up, the Triduum. Father P.J., welcome.
Thank you.
A happy Holy Week to you, sir.
And to you, sir.
Are you ready? Are you mentally prepared for what's going to happen this week?
No, but I find that I sort of get ready by about Wednesday.
Okay. Well, I mean, for you guys, it's Super Bowl season here for you.
It is. No, it's a marathon.
I'm sure. I mean, come Easter Sunday, after you're all done, it's wipeout time, I imagine. Just
Yeah. Easter Sunday night, you kind of crash and maybe you don't wake up till Tuesday or something.
That's exactly right. Well, I saw, obviously I've been pitching it for a while that we have Man Up. It's Triduum. I'm thinking, man, what a great, it's a perfect subject to have, obviously, the week before. And I'm like, it'd be great to have you on the show to talk about, kind of rehash. Obviously, you already had it down. You already thought through what you were going to talk about. Now we can rehash it on the show. So give me, did they tell you, hey, we want to talk about the Triduum? Or is that something that you said, hey, I could talk about the Triduum? I want to hear about maybe why we chose this and what we talked about.
So I think this probably came out of a podcast I did last year for Friends Romans Iowans. Because I did the Triduum for them last year. Okay. And I think we did 3 actual separate episodes. I can't remember. But the Man Up people asked me, and I said, let's go.
Okay, cool. Well, let's dive into it. For those of you who could not make it, What was the main tenet that we were trying to get out of it? Obviously, we had 20 minutes here. You had longer there. What were the main themes of it?
Two big takeaways that I would offer to people to sort of make a better Holy Week are the themes of death and pilgrimage. And there's some very specific reasons. Death, I'll freely admit, I may be in a bit of a morbid sentiment simply because in my own pastoral life the last couple of months we just had a lot of dead people. But I think it's really important for people to know, most of us, especially if we practice regularly, like you wind up at funerals maybe 3 or 4 times a year. Somebody dies and you go either to a wake or a funeral. You try and be present. But I think, when you grow up around it, you often don't catch where this is all coming from. So the church's funeral rites are tied directly to the services of Holy Week. So the reason that we have a threefold or 3-station process of burial, so the wake, the vigil service, the funeral mass itself, and then the burial, is patterned directly after Holy Thursday, Good Friday, and Holy Saturday.
I did not know that.
And I figured so, which is why I want you to learn.
All right.
So I think if we can kind of recapture some of that, and I really encourage people, Holy Week and especially Holy Saturday, treat that almost like All Souls Day. Go to a cemetery. If you're from here and you have your own people in a cemetery nearby, go visit your people. If not, just go visit a cemetery to pray for the dead. But there's this deep thrust, right, that for us, the grave, which was once a sign of hopelessness, skull and crossbones, the end of all things, is now a sign of hope. It's been changed, and it's been changed because of the events of the week. How we get there is by way of pilgrimage, which is what the church is really calling us to do in all of the services of Holy Week, by walking through the streets of Jerusalem, figuratively on Palm Sunday, by coming together around the table on Thursday, by keeping vigil with the Lord Thursday night, and then by walking with him in the way of the cross on Friday.
Okay. By the way, Holy Saturday, I've always seen that as kind of the forgotten day, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we obviously have Thursday, Palm Sunday, but then Thursday, Friday, and Sunday marked, and there's this thing Holy Saturday where there's nothing that the church says you have to do this or you really should do this. And so it's kind of the tradition I have installed in my life, and you're going to know it, I'm sure. The reading from the Office of Readings that Saturday is by whom? I don't even know who.
Well, we don't know.
Is it really an unknown author? Okay.
It maybe Melito Sardis. There's a couple other ideas, but we don't know for sure.
So anyway, whoever this author is, whatever it is, I now find myself praying that every morning and reflecting on it. So you can just do the Office of Readings on Saturday morning. You'll see it. It's this really great exhortation on the empty, or on how Jesus has gone down to hell and what's going on. It's really incredible. So
I wrote my first master's thesis on that reading.
I did not write my master's thesis on that. Did you really?
I did.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it was called Boring as Hell.
That's great. So I'm glad I asked you the question. I said, of course you would know this. And not only did you know it, you wrote a master's thesis on it. So there we go. So when we're looking at this, and the church has this death and pilgrimage mindset that you've got, historically, is that the way it's always been, or how have things changed? Can I go back to, I think one of the Man Up talks a couple of years ago, you spoke on the historicity of how Lent has changed, maybe some of those practices. Let's talk specifically then maybe on the Triduum.
So Holy Week, the Holy Week services we have now are really derived in large part from the practice of the Jerusalem community in the late 4th century. So there was a pilgrim from the west, I think Gaul, but I'd have to check that out, whose name is variously translated, but Egeria or Egeria or something, Eugenia, like lady with an E for a name. And she visited the Holy Land for several years, but she kept a journal, and her pilgrim diary recorded in great detail what the liturgical practices were of the church in Jerusalem. And the idea was that the church in Jerusalem had been fairly isolated from the rest of Christendom for a large part of those early years because of the persecutions. And so this kind of opened up for the rest of the church how they kept the memory of the Lord's passing. And then many of those practices spread throughout the rest of the church, which is why, in a way that is kind of different than the rest of the year, the Holy Week services for us and the Greeks and the Maronites and the Slavs, they're much more similar than in much of the rest of the year.
Well, good. As a Greek, I'm glad that we're similar to the Greeks. I actually have a great. I love the Greek Orthodox Church. I think they do a really good job. And we actually celebrate a new tradition in our family because we can't celebrate. We can't do an Easter celebration with all the Greek people in my family because we have actual Easter.
Right.
So now we celebrate Greek Easter as an excuse to eat lamb and stuff every year. So
that's very reasonable.
There you go. So I do celebrate the Orthodox calendar just as an excuse to drink ouzo and eat lamb. So all right. So let's look through here. Kind of thinking practically through the calendar of this upcoming, this week here, we have, Spy Wednesday. I don't know if people set that aside. I know at our house we do some things with the kids. Is there anything you recommend on Wednesday? Obviously, maybe lead up to Thursday.
There are culinary traditions, there are food traditions that are attached to this that are easily findable online, Catholic culture, places like that.
Yeah.
We do a thing with the school kids at Christ the King. So we actually like we do Spy Wednesday, Holy Thursday, Good Friday because the kids are in school for all those days, which has not always been the case and maybe shouldn't, but is. So we make use of it by making sure the kids are at least in church each day.
Yeah, understanding what's going on. Okay. So now let's get into Thursday. So Holy Thursday, I'll give you something that I've done. I've mentioned this in the show before. One of the things that I've done the day of is I try to find an adoration chapel. I try to read, is it John? I think it's 13 to 17, 13 to 19. I can't.
The high priestly prayer.
All of it, right? And kind of just in its entirety, slowly chew on it in front of the Blessed Sacrament. That has been very edifying for me. Just setting that time aside ahead of what's coming. So kind of preparing myself for what's about to happen. And so I kind of do a pre-Holy Thursday Mass. They also then entering into, obviously, wherever your parish is, going to that. And then does every parish have adoration afterwards? Is that like standard? Most do?
It's standard.
Okay.
I mean, I can't say whether there's one place that doesn't or something like
but
that.
in general.
But a pious custom attached to this that I would recommend to people here in town, and it's certainly doable in a place like Des Moines. We used to do this in seminary. Is visiting other churches' adoration chapels. The custom is to keep adoration going till at or about midnight, and most places will do that. And so, like, what I do when I'm done at Christ the King is I'll zip down to St. Anthony and then over to Our Lady of the Americas, and I'll hit 3 or 4 of the adoration chapels. We try and get our youth group together to do it, and so the kids get to see. But I think part of it is that visiting. So there's an ancient Roman custom of visiting stational churches that night. So this is drawing on a real thing, but a real historical thing. But I find just on a human level, the care that communities take with their altar of repose gives you kind of a flavor or a taste of the community. And in as much as in a local church the size of Des Moines, we are maybe much more closely connected than you would be in Chicago or something. I think it's good to do.
Yeah, and I've never done that. I usually just stay for my own parish is. And I've mentioned this before, but we last year, 2 years ago, did a where we actually did adoration at our house after obviously the Blessed Sacrament. We had 5 kids screaming, yelling. So let's just get back home.
Yeah, that's smart.
And then we turned the lights off and we read the prayers and it was actually to be wonderful. So my point on that is you got to be flexible, right? If you're at a stage in your life where you can do the whole thing till midnight, awesome. Chris and I have only been there for a year. Once we started having kids, like the whole thing changed. But now we're morphing. We're trying to just be as intentional as we can while understanding where we are in our life, right? And so I think that's been very healthy for us, is to say you don't just go all in on whatever the thing the parish is doing. Try to, but if you got to flex, and go the other way. Okay, so Holy Thursday, obviously we have Mass at 7 most places, right? Figure out where your time is.
7.
And then after that, you've got hopefully adoration and whatnot. So enter into that. The next day, we have obviously Good Friday.
Can we just back real quick? One other pious custom that some families do that I think is worthy of mentioning, clarifying, and potentially holding up. Is the practice of foot washing in the home. So the foot washing at Mass is really a fairly new thing. That was not part of the rites before the council. It was not part of the rites for most of the church's history. But foot washing has been an important part of the church's tradition here. It's usually been extra liturgical, and part of the reason for it is bishops washing the feet of clergy is a thing that has often happened liturgically. In monastic communities, the group that I was a part of, it was normal for the superior to wash the feet of all the subjects. But see, here what you're preserving, which is what often gets messed up in parishes, the message of Holy Thursday foot washing is not everybody should be nice to each other or generically serve, like in the sense of social work or something. It's because God in the flesh gets down on his hands and knees and washes the feet of the creatures he's made that it matters. So if you're going to do it, you do it right. If you do it in the household, mom and dad wash the feet of the kids. And then probably dad washes mom's feet, right? If you're doing it in the context of a parochial situation, the pastor should take the Holy Thursday Mass, and he should be the one who washes the feet, including the feet of the other clergy. But the whole purpose here is to sort of invert hierarchy in the best sense, and there's all kinds of resources that are available to figure out how to do this. We do it at school, at Christ the King. We do it at school where teachers wash students' feet, principal washes teachers' feet, and then I wash the feet of the staff. But you're like doubly inverted. Right? It's the person in charge who becomes the servant.
Yeah. Great. Very good.
Good Friday? So the Good Friday service of the Passion, at whatever time it happens in your places, and that varies more.
Significantly, yeah.
Stations are, of course, a big part of this. And stations, this is where that sense of pilgrimage really comes from, right? It's important for people to remember, I beat this one a lot at Christ the King, St. Francis of Assisi is the one who brought us both the Christmas creche and the Stations of the Cross. And this isn't an accident, right? Again, he was visiting the Holy Land. He wanted to bring that experience of pilgrimage to the Holy Land to people that he knew would never be able to travel there. It's important when we do the stations, even if we do them at home, to travel, like to physically move if we're able. I encouraged people during COVID to literally make the stations in their house, but like move from room to room and kind of make a station in each room. And I was inspired by an old lady who'd fallen in the bathroom, and who found in her falling sort of the falling of Jesus on the way to the cross. Whatever that looks like for you. My niece always says that we always start stations at home at the kitchen table because that's where you get in trouble. Whatever that looks like for you and your family, though, don't be afraid to take those practices from the sanctuary and bring them back home into your own house.
Yeah, again, if you have little kids, it might make more sense. You might get actually more out of it. I noticed that with COVID, I basically became the priest. Obviously, we couldn't even go to Easter Mass, and so I was doing my sermon very pointed at my what then was like 7, 5, 3, and so if it worked,
not as easy as it looks, is it, Joe?
Dude, brother, trying to do that and then preach to 90-year-olds and 50-year-olds, it's a lot of action. I don't know how you do that all. Okay, so enter into obviously every church is different. Look up what your church offers. Another thing it's been helpful to me is increasing the fasting on Good Friday. A lot of us in a men's group, we basically stop eating Holy Thursday, and then we won't eat again until either after Good Friday or even Easter Sunday or whatever those things are, depending on the year and depending on what the schedule looks like. But at least on Good Friday, like I would, if you can, I would recommend not eating at all that day at best.
So Vatican II is actually extremely clear on this. It's kind of weird, because it's sort of random where it appears in the documents, but it says very clearly, the Paschal fast remaining in force is to be the strictest of the year. And the Paschal fast really is supposed to run from after Holy Thursday night until whatever your Mass for Easter is.
Yeah.
So that might well be the vigil, right?
Yep.
And so then you would break the fast, or it might be Sunday morning if you don't go to the vigil.
Yep.
But the idea really is that you're doing as little as is possible in terms of sustenance from Thursday to Easter. Now, all the caveats normally being in place. Don't spike your blood sugar. Don't pass out. Don't do dumb stuff, right?
Yep.
But what you can do, you ought to do. And Lent should be really progressive leading up to this.
Yep.
This should be the most intense of the year.
100%. And again, this is something that I think we started about 5-6 years ago in a men's group, and it's been, I think we did it the first time. This is great. I mean, it really helps you to enter into these mysteries and enter into the Christ Passion. Man, Christ is suffering right now. I'm hungry. Christ is in the grave. I'm hungry. You can feel that connection with what Jesus is going through.
Turns out the whole of the tradition wasn't crazy.
Yeah, can you believe it?
And just trying hard to be nice to people doesn't work very well.
No. I remember my first time doing this and going the whole time and then breaking the fast at the vigil, so like 52 hours not eating. And I'm like, I was celebrating pretty hard when Jesus rose from the dead. I mean, you feel the excitement of the moment, because you have this physical link to what's going on. So
just as there's a kind of exhilaration, right, in physical activities, sport or whatever else, there's a kind of exhilaration that comes from fasting.
Yep.
So it's utilizing the body to get to the soul, and that's really what we're trying to do.
Yeah. So Friday we have additional fasting. I mean, obviously the church has specific fasting, but we would say, to the extent that you're able, go further. Enter into what your parish is doing. Then Saturday, you already mentioned maybe visit grave sites, praying for the dead, this exhortation, anything else you would throw on Saturday?
Well, so while it's true that like most parish churches don't have something explicit listed on the schedule for Saturday, and this is largely practical because they're getting stuff ready for Saturday night.
Yep.
It is true that there are rites associated with the RCIA people, with the people that are with the elect coming into the church, that are at least theoretically supposed to happen Saturday. And if you call your parish and see if they're actually doing them. If they are, you should go. Like they're worthwhile because they show you what the church thinks is most immediately preparatory for baptism, which is good for all of us who are baptized because we probably haven't thought about it.
Yes, I would imagine as much. Which leads us to Sunday. We have 3 minutes to hit Sunday. Obviously, we'll start with the vigil leading up to it.
So go to the vigil, especially if you've never been to the vigil. Go to the vigil.
Yeah.
And really offer part of your fasting and penance that week for those that are coming into the church.
Yeah. If you've not been to a vigil, you have to go. I mean, obviously, again, if you're able, all those things. My first one was I was an adult for sure. I was in my 20s, and it's a game changer.
It changes everything.
It changes everything, and it's the highest. I mean, as far as Mass goes, it is. It's the GOAT. It's the GOAT Mass of the year. It's incredible. The way that everything is so well put together, the salvation history, all that stuff, and then obviously your parish, you already mentioned it, is probably preparing a pretty great liturgy throughout the whole day and the whole week. And every time we've gone, we've been so thoroughly satisfied. So if you make the vigil, make the vigil. If you can't, obviously you have lots of options the next day. Other things you're doing outside of attending the vigil or Mass that you would say would help to enter into the Easter Sunday celebration? Well,
as I said before, if you can on Saturday, visit a cemetery. I think that'd be really good to help situate where death and life sort of fit into this. A lot of the cultural traditions that look very secular now have, like, they're ours. It's just like Hallmark co-opted them or something. Eggs are a real part of our tradition. They're a real part of your tradition in a way they're not sort of part of mine, right? So egg hunts are fine. And especially the painting of eggs and the painting of eggs scarlet, right? So we know what it is, where life comes from. Feast, like really consciously, like make Easter dinner the best dinner of the year. If Easter Mass is the most important, then make that family dinner the biggest, most important dinner of the year.
Yeah, I fully believe that we as Catholics, we talk about the fasting, even though I don't think we do it, as you mentioned 2 years ago at your talk, like not nearly as well as we used to do on the fasting side, so ramping that up is good. But we need to take full advantage of the feasting, right? I did a better job of that this Lent. Maybe it's a cheat code, but during the Annunciation, during the Feast of St. Joseph, I used to say, no, those don't count. I'm like, well, no, they count, and we should be taking those aside and not fasting during those pieces, or at least celebrating them in some way, shape, or form. Which means if we're culminating Easter Sunday, it should be a party, ladies and gentlemen. Like, you should be planning a party and fully entering into the greatest moment in the church, in the calendar of the church, in the history of the world. Like, plan on it and make it happen. Anything else you would add as people are entering this Holy Week to help set it apart and make it more special or more uplifting, or help them enter further into it that we didn't cover?
Outside. We're fortunate to live in a place where, unless we get a freak snowstorm, our outsides typically match what's going on inside. And Easter's falling late enough this year. Plant something, or like literally physically go outside so that you have the experience of new natural life to sort of fulminate the experience of the life of grace inside you.
Father PJ, pleasure, brother.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks for joining us. We're going to head to a short break. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Whatever your political party, prayer can unite us together for the good in our community. Join Iowa's governor and community leaders as we gather for the 61st Annual Iowa Prayer Breakfast, Thursday, April 14th from 7:15 to 8:45 at the Veterans Memorial Community Choice Credit Union Convention Center. Learn more at iowaprayerbreakfast.com.
A message from Iowa Catholic Radio.
This Easter holiday, see the movie based on the inspiring true story
Figured it out. I'm going to be a priest.
For Halloween.
of Father Stu.
No one wants to hear the gospel from the mouth of a gangster.
Academy Award nominee Mark Wahlberg.
Maybe that's exactly what they need.
And Academy Award winner Mel Gibson.
Man don't lose when he gets knocked down, but when he won't get up.
God ain't giving up on you. Don't you dare go giving up on yourself.
When the man comes around. Father Stu, exclusively in movie theaters April 13. Rated R. Under 17, not admitted without parent.
My help comes from you. You're right here.
Welcome back to Man Up on Iowa Catholic Radio. My thanks again to Father PJ McManus. A lot to chew on there, obviously. But I think the most important thing, regardless of what it looks like, it's going to be different for each of us, right? Each of us are going to have a different schedule. Each of us are going to have different opportunities given to us. But I just want to make sure that we're all striving as best we can to set this time apart. As I mentioned, one of my big things I've done in the past is, on Holy Thursday, taking that time in adoration to quiet, to read, John. It's chapter 13 to 19, the whole, basically the entire narrative that starts in the upper room and all the teachings that Jesus gave there. And just reflecting on those. And I've mentioned, in the past, what we did last year, which was this incredible, with coronavirus, is 2020, I guess, when we wanted to be a part of, the adoration that we experience on Holy Thursday, and we couldn't until we went back to our house and set up adoration there. Obviously, we didn't have the Blessed Sacrament, but we talked through the readings with the kids, and it was candlelit, and it was dark. And then we put the younger ones to bed, and it was just maybe the older 2 or 3, and we continued just to pray in silence. And we would talk amongst each other about these readings, about what's going on. And it was an incredible moment. It was an incredible evening that I'll never forget. And so, again, I think that was a great example for us of, not every person's life is going to be the same as what they can do. But I think, as Father PJ alluded to, this is the most important feast of in the church. We need to be doing it. We need to be setting aside time in whatever manner it looks like. So just reflect today, as you're putting your schedule together for this week, as you're thinking through it, and, figure out, what can you do to set aside this time to make it more special, to grow in conformity to Jesus. So that way, when Easter comes at the end of this week, when we have the resurrection at the end of this week, we are able to celebrate that we went into the Passion with Him, and we're going to celebrate the resurrection with Him on Easter. So a blessed Holy Week to all of you, and a happy Easter. Thank you for joining me today on Man Up on Iowa Catholic Radio. I am Joe Stopulos. It's time to man up.
Man Up, inspiring men to live out their call to holiness.